Welcome to Parks and Open Spaces. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions and directions to the fire exits and make your way to the assembly point adjacent to the Quick Fit building. In the interest of openness and transparency, the law permits recording and photography to report on the proceedings of the council meetings when they are open to the public. No flash photography or additional lighting should be used without prior consent. Anyone wishing to report on the meeting or anyone not wishing to be filmed or photographed should notify the clerk or chair. The meeting will be live streamed on YouTube. Therefore, please remember to speak clearly and use your microphones. Remember to switch it off when you have finished. As the chair of the meeting, I have discretion to suspend or terminate live streaming if, in my opinion, continuing to do so would prejudicial the proceedings of the meeting. Improper conduct or disruptive behaviour will not be tolerated. Please raise your hand to indicate you wish to speak and wait for me to call upon you. As the chair of the meeting, I will determine the order in which members will be invited to speak. To ensure the efficiency of the meeting, no members may speak for more than 3 minutes on one item or more than once. Therefore, please make your point as consistently as possible. Please may I also remind you to be polite and respectful towards one another at all times. Please put your phones on silent mode and put the phones away for the duration of the meeting and adhere to the non-smoking policy of this building and its grounds. Thank you. So today we have councillors Wendy Brooks, John Murray, Andy Pears, Bernie Rappensberg and myself, Elise Youngman. And we also have Clark and Kildare today. Can't seem to speak. Taylor Williams, the planning and committee clerk, and Lauren Elliott, the I can't remember today.
Senior committee and project.
Senior, that's it.
I stuck it wrong.
It's been a while. Right, 28 to receive and consider approvals of apology for absence. Do we have any, Taylor?
No apologies received, Chair.
We don't have to do anything for that. 29 declarations of interest and dispensations. Do we have any? Andy?
Non-registerable. Some of the assets that are in papers and may be discussed at 33.3 and 34 are in Gunton Ward. I'm the current chair of Gunton Residents Association, which has a general interest in the improvement of the ward, but no specific interest in any town castle assets or any of the items on this agenda.
Thank you. 29 point Andy. Not Andy, Wendy, sorry.
I don't, it might come up, I'm not sure, but I'm a member of Suffolk Wildlife Trust.
Thank you. Sorry about that. As the same, been a long day. 29.1 to receive declarations of declosable, pecuniary and other registrable and non-registrable interests from the councillors on items on this agenda. No? Nothing? 29.2 to consider written. We've just done that, haven't we?
Yeah, you did twice. To make John do the first one twice.
Yeah. 29.2 to consider written request for dispensation to interest and note dispensations granted.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Number 30 to consider the draft minutes of the meeting on the 15th of July 2025. Wendy?
Those we approve.
Andy?
Second.
All in favour? Pass everyone. Thank you. 31 public forum, an opportunity for the public to make comments on any matters on this agenda and consider any advance comments from the public. Taylor?
No advance comments received, Chair, and no one's in attendance on the webinar.
Thank you. 32 to monitor expenditure by the subcommittee from its delegated budget. Have we spent anything lately?
I don't have anything specific to raise under this item, Chair.
Thank you. 33 play areas. 33.1 to receive an update on quotes for repairs of Sparrow's Nest play area equipment. Lauren?
No quotes needed. It's all been done and at no cost.
That's great. Thank you. Wendy?
Has the fencing been taken down now then?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Good. 33.2 to receive an update on the proposed development of Clark's Lane play area.
Did you want me to speak on this one?
Yeah, you can, Lauren.
I think this will pretty much merge with the next agenda item as well. So the obviously just to give you a reminder, the proposal for Clark's Lane was for, because we've got no existing play equipment there at all at the moment, was for a brand new accessible inclusive facility. So obviously it's going to be a very major project for the town council, very expensive project, something we may have to potentially budget for over a couple of years, obviously depending on other budget requirements that we know we're going to have. So it's really a council decision as to when we schedule that in, taking, you know, when we start our budget setting round, which will be imminently. We've also got the car park to complement that as well, because obviously parking nearby is very, very limited. The park itself has no dedicated car parking, so that's also something we would need to take into consideration. We've had some very positive discussions with East Suffolk Council planning officers on that, so we have identified an area we could set aside for car parking, which we think should be just for blue badge holders. And so yeah, it's just a case of a decision on when we schedule that in.
Thank you. Andy?
Yes, I read the briefing paper. I think it was very clear. It's very good. I don't really want to rehash anything that's in the paper. I think the only thing I would like to say from a scheduling and budgeting point of view, given the fact that we would intend to pretty much finalise the 26-27 budget by the end of this calendar year. We can do some topping and tailing in January, but most of the work will take place in Q4 this year, this calendar year. So what would be good to know is to try and have, I accept the fact that it's a major project and it will probably have to deliver it in phases and so on like that, maybe over a couple of years. But what we could really do with, without sort of disclosing it publicly, in case there needs to be a tender or anything like that, is an outline indication of what the total project will be and how much of that is it anticipated that we would need to directly fund, or are we intending to seek grant funding and we match fund? Because if there is a match funding element, whether it's going to be 25%, 50% or whatever it is, it would help to know by the end of this year, and because we need to get the match funding in the budget, even if we are going out to seek grants for the remaining funding. But without having an indication of the cost and therefore what the match funding is, it's very, very difficult to budget.
John?
Thank you. Really, just asking some questions. The car parking spaces that you've referenced, clearly there's a need for people to park. How many spaces do we anticipate? And is it, I get the need to have spaces for blue badge holders in the context of what it is we're trying to establish. But is it right that there should be no parking for non-blue badge holders? Because there is a lack of parking in the area generally, and therefore people who don't have a blue badge but want to go to the area are not going to have any facility that we're creating. So there's I get the blue badge bit, but I was interested in how many, and would it not be appropriate to try and get some conventional or non-blue badge parking?
Yeah, did you want me to answer?
Yes.
Brooks coming first. Yeah, so just very quickly, it would only be a relatively small parking area, so we're probably talking no more than about 10 spaces. So our thinking was we'd probably want to prioritise those that would have physical difficulties in getting to the player, because that was kind of the point of the facility. You know, those should be prioritised if they physically can't travel a distance. So that was what our thinking was. But yeah, there's definitely a balance to be struck, and it's something we'd need to think about, and of course enforcement of it as well. I mean, we can put signs up to say be considerate and respect that this is a sort of set aside for users of this inclusive facility. But you know, in reality, we're not going to have parking attendants. So yeah, there's a balance to be struck. Then it's something we would have to think about. But on the discussions we've had with the planning authority, that's the sort of size we're looking at. So it's not going to be a sizable car park because we don't want to take up too much of that open space either.
Thank you. Wendy?
Oh, unless I missed something, I don't think there was ever a decision that it was only going to be for blue badge holders.
No, that's not been
That's never been agreed. No, so it will always be a balance, but it would be for the people using the park.
Yes.
Not to alleviate parking around that area. Although of course that is also might be problematic, but hopefully not. I want to suggest at this stage, I think this project, and I think we have time for it, because after looking at the 5-year plan, we've got a lot of really expensive work that needs doing that we've got on the agenda. From the Normanstown Park, the Dean's Oval, the change, you know, so many things. I think this project, Lauren, we should really be looking for some external funding because of its remit. And I think it might be something that we can get some, you know, we can match fund it. If that could be,
I would hope so.
yeah, if that could be looked at as soon as possible, I think I would think we need to go that way.
I'm sure we've discussed funding for this park before, haven't we?
Yeah, it's always a little bit difficult because you're never quite sure. You know, nothing's sort of guaranteed. I mean, you can look at criteria and say, well, I think we meet that criteria, but obviously a funder won't ever say, yeah, we'll give you X amount until you actually put in the formal bid for it. So, but we can certainly see what funds are available and if we do meet the criteria of a local authority, because this is, although it's a play area, it is sort of over and above what a town council would usually do. So hoping that would work in our favour.
Right. Andy?
Yeah, it's actually worth pointing out, and I don't mean anything by this, so please don't take it the wrong way. The project itself has not been approved yet. It was mooted as a concept, and the council, but because staff were unsure what East Suffolk's position would be on planning consent for the parking area, rather than spend a lot of time in here dealing with a project with respect only for East Suffolk Council to say no parking under anything and waste all that time, we asked our staff to basically go and have that conversation with East Suffolk up front and come back with a position on the parking, whether there was going to be a planning issue. We now have that guidance. So at some point, therefore, it needs to come back to the council, and given the budget, it will be full council, even if it goes through Parks Aid first, to essentially authorise it. And that's kind of the point I was getting at earlier, and which Wendy has also reiterated, that before we can give serious consideration to it, we need a spec, even if it's an outline spec, and we need a cost, even if it's an outline cost. And I take the point that you're making, Lauren, about not actually being in the position to apply for funds at the moment. But what it would be interesting to know is whether we are targeting funding, whether we intend to target funding for this, and whether we are looking to target all of the majority of the funding or the match funding. And it would be useful to have that indicative figure and an outline cost by the end of December, so that we can understand, okay, if we are going to be asked to say, like, match fund 25 or 50%, what does that mean in the context of the whole budget? And do we have 1-2 years to put that aside? Then we can have a look at that in the budget. Without an overall cost and an indication of what we are being expected to directly fund, we can't have a serious conversation about that in budgeting terms. And that's probably really where what needs to happen next. And given the scale of the project, if there's any uncertainty about how to approach that, can I suggest maybe have a word with Karen internally first, but actually how to approach that from a point of view that there is something serious that can be put in front of councillors, both for scheduling and budgeting.
Thank you. Wendy?
Just to say to Lauren that you know, I'm not the real, actually, I'm not the real rep. I'm the substitute rep. I'm the only one who's ever been to the Waveney Disability Forum. They might be a useful link in knowing I'm just suggesting that they're very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got the contact details for
Yes.
them. I think that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Right, so next one, 33.3 to receive an assessment of the play areas 2026 to 2027 budget considerations. Andy?
Well, I thought it was an excellent paper, very comprehensive, and I'd like to thank everyone who had a hand in putting that together. It's very, very useful. I think in many respects it confirms what some of us already suspected, that there's probably no complete renovations of any particular play area needed this year, but there may be pieces of equipment that need replacing on certain areas and things like that, and that's kind of borne out, but asset by asset, which is very useful. So I have two comments to make, both very different. If I can just throw them out for staff to take under advisement, if that's okay. One of them is where it's been identified by staff that the town council may wish to budget for the replacement of an individual piece of equipment that is either broken or approaching end of life or whatever like that. On the assumption that we were to progress all of those in 26-27, if not before, could they give us an indicative budget that we would need to look at? So if we said, like, okay, we don't need to do a complete play area renovation in 26-27 because most of them have actually been done and newly refurbished at some point in the last 5 years. But if we were to give attention to these individual items that have been earmarked on these areas, what would the total ask be financially, so that we can look at what we need to do to try and accommodate that? And secondly, it was mentioned in connection with one asset that it had been suggested / discussed about fencing the play area. So I don't want to reiterate that discussion because it's not on the agenda. So I'm not offering an opinion on it, and I'm not seeking an opinion at this stage but we had agreed that there would be a policy on fencing. And not just for the one asset in the context of which it's mentioned in this play area, but across all our unfenced play areas. And it would be each case on its merits based on the need and the risk. That, you know, there would be a risk assessment and so on like that. So it mentions in the report that staff will draft a policy. That's absolutely fine. I have no objection to that. And it's probably the best place to start with a policy. But can I just reiterate politely, and again, I don't mean anything by this, that there is no delegation from full council, not just to staff, not to committees or subcommittees either, to make new policy or to amend existing policy. But we had the meeting with the ground maintenance team earlier this year, and obviously things like policy, things like planning, it would help if councillors and staff could meet in committee and try to reach consensus on a particular issue, so that we then present a joint position to full council. So if staff are going to draft this policy as they suggest, I agree that's probably the best way to start, but please obviously bear in mind that no rationale for fencing have yet been agreed. So they can by all means make a recommendation, but that in itself will need to be discussed as part of the recommendation on a final policy. The only rationale that's been mentioned is possible safety need and what the town council's public liability position if it was to do nothing on that. So it hadn't reached a consensus or a decision on that. It's just something that needs to be taken into account when a policy is being devised. So can I just in the context of that, I'm quite happy with the suggestion that staff draft the policy as the first call, but as and when they've done so, could they bring it to Parks in the first instance to try and reach consensus on the recommendations and the draft, so it can then go through to full council? And if they are going to recommend some fencing based on their draft paper, if there's a safety imperative, they may want us to have a look at it in this financial year, you know, out of this year's budget. But could they make it clear what they are in terms of priorities, what they are looking at, and If it's this year's budget, then we need to look at, we have parks capital funds, we have parks repair and maintenance funds, as well as general repair and maintenance funds. If it's 26-27, can they make that clear and give us an indicative cost for whatever fencing they're recommending? Because alongside devising of the policy, we're going to have an ever decreasing window in which to action and budget for any of the recommendations. So if they can give some thought, if they are going to recommend fencing, if they can give some thought to costing it up while they're doing the policy, so that we can consider the whole thing in the round. Thank you.
John?
Thank you. I agree. I think it's an excellent report, and I think people who've put it together should be congratulated. I wanted also to make reference to the part of the report where it talks about the drafting a policy. Elsewhere, it mentions that officers or some of our staff will be accompanying the ROSPA inspector or approved inspector when they do inspection of facilities. That might be an opportunity for us to say to the ROSPA person, do you have a draft policy that we could at least base ours on rather than starting from the ground? It doesn't mean to say we have to adopt it, as Andy says, or anything, but taking something that's in existence and amending it to your local needs can be a lot easier than starting from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, just clarifying that we don't accompany the inspector when they go out to sites, but we can certainly ask questions of them. Yeah, we've got contact details, so yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. Wendy?
Just John, I've actually looked at the ROSPA guidelines, and the ROSPA guidelines are actually very like ours. It depends on the terrain, it depends on the environment about fencing. So there's nothing in there that says all play parks should be fenced. So it's that's their advice. They understand that in certain situations, I'm not saying that we don't, but they don't have a policy that says all children's play parks should be fenced because of the nature that some of them are just in the wrong. It's not appropriate in some places.
We weren't actually talking about the fencing tonight.
No,
anyway,
but it comes up in the report.
Yeah.
It's there. I was just mentioning to John.
John?
Just very briefly, I take that point. It may be, though, that the ROSPA say, oh, we know Council X, they've got a good draft, they've got a good policy, you might want to see that. So that they may help.
The question I've got is the swing at Bentley Drive. I didn't think that was ours. I thought that was the cut through.
Yeah,
It is ours now.
Yeah, it's not actually in the parish of Lowestoft, but we do own it.
Oh, that's right then, because I thought
Yeah,
it
so
was
we
owned
own,
by Hilton Board, and
no,
that's why we never done it in the
we
first
own the
place.
equipment, but yeah, the site boundary is really peculiar because part of it is in Alton Parish. But yeah, we do definitely own all of the equipment at Bentley Drive.
Oh, that's okay then. Andy?
So there was another item I meant to raise in connection with the player assessment. I mentioned this the other day, but I think it might have been out of a meeting. So the tower unit at Fen Park, when we took the year we took the ground maintenance in-house and we're finalising our budget, as well as whatever full play area refurbs we did that year, we put some money in the budget, and it was in the Fen Park tab, not in the play areas tab, for specific pieces of work on Fen Park play area. One was the matting on the older piece of equipment, which has been done. One was for replacement of the tower unit, because it was thought at that time we might have to do it in 23-24. It was subsequently identified that actually it was in better nick than had been thought and was not immediate priority, but we left that funding, or after what's been spent on the matting and other bits of reconditioned equipment, we left that funding attached to the Fen Park tab. And I can't remember what it is now, but I think there was something substantial, like 15 or 16,000 that was still left in there out of the original sum, which I think was nearer 30,000. So as we don't have the latest version of the budget, could we just double check that there is a ring-fenced amount for replacement of play equipment at Fen Park already in the budget? Because obviously we don't want to double precepts. But if we then get a cost for an indicative cost for replacement of the tower unit, take off what is already in the Fen Park tab, and if there is the need to be more than what we've got made available, then we obviously only need to consider precepting for the difference rather than for the full amount.
Sure, last time I looked, there was 15,000 left in it. Bernie?
I'm just looking at the meeting paper for the 5-year plans, and it says there is funds of 16 to 17,000 have been ring fenced.
I thought it was about 16,000. So it's still in there then, apparently. Okay. So when we get the, yeah, please.
Wendy? Mike, please, Wendy.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Park, I think, do they want our, I think they want our agreement that we're happy to proceed with them improving the ground around some of the play equipment. The play areas, they want to say, they say, so the team would need to consider the appropriate time of year to undertake these works. So presumably that'd be autumn, won't it? Or spring?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd obviously avoid doing it in the busiest season. It's I have to speak with the grounds maintenance team about, because I'm not sure if there'd be any sort of cost attached to that at all, I guess, just for the levelling it out and the topping it again. So yeah, we'd bring that back to you in an appropriate time when we have costed that out. And again, that will have to be looked at, as we were saying earlier, identifying what priorities are and costing those out. So yeah, we'll bring that back to you when we've put that all together.
Okay, Wendy?
Well, they do, I mean, rather than us keep coming back, at this stage, can we not just, it's not going to be phenomenally expensive, is it? It's just regrassing.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, no. It should just be sort of topsoil and seeding. We'd have to fence it off for a time to allow that to then
But
establish.
can't we just approve it so that when they want to do it, they can get on with it?
Can we approve it on this agenda?
We haven't. I mean, we haven't got it as an agenda item as such.
It's in the,
Would-
it's in the report. The report, it says if the town council are happy for them to proceed. So can't we take that? It's not, I mean, we're considering the plan, aren't we? Their analysis of the park. So coming out of
Yeah.
that, I'm proposing that we give the go ahead to the ground maintenance team to do the work they feel necessary when it's appropriate, because they might say they want to do it like in October and then we miss it and, you know, we've got to come back to another meeting.
Yeah, I'm just thinking what you might want to put to that in terms of a maximum budget as well. I'd probably hazard a couple of £100 to £500, maybe maximum. But yeah, also I'll let council
No, you
here
wouldn't
come
need
in
that
as well.
Well, let me just mention the figure I had in mind.
Yeah.
It was 1,000. Sorry, Wendy just mentioned the figure I had in my mind, which was 1,000. I would suggest it can be discussed on here because 33.30 is a play area assessment, and it was a suggestion that was made in that assessment. So, and I think they commented without giving any figures that I haven't got it open in front of me. The attachment's down below because I read it before I came out. But it was, I think they mentioned that they didn't expect it to particularly cost a lot, but it was just that they would need to fence it off to allow the seeding to take. It couldn't actively use while the seeding was taken, which, you know, harks to Wendy's point about picking the timing. So if Wendy's going to make that, did you make that as a formal proposal, Wendy? So I'll second on that basis that we give a, we approve them going ahead with a working budget of £1,000 to come from Parks repair and maintenance budget. If you're happy with that, Wendy.
Yeah.
And just ask them if they can do it in time, that if they think it's going to be more than that, can they just come back to September 8? Otherwise, you know, September Parks. But if they think they need slightly more than that, then if they could ask us for it in September 8, if they think that'll comfortably be enough, then fine. You know, just go ahead and schedule according to when is the most appropriate time to fence off, obviously presumably avoiding school holidays.
So we've got a proposal and we've got a seconder, so all in favour? That's everyone. Anyone else got anything else to add to this? No? Right, so we are now on 34. To receive feedback from a meeting to consider priorities for the 5-year plan. I'm sorry I left a little bit early, but my signal got really bad. Andy?
We met. I think it was a pretty productive meeting. I think everyone was there would agree, but I think we agreed that the plan we did have, which was like everything on a page, which we'd previously rag rated, we didn't rag rate it according to what we thought was a priority. We rag rated it on the basis of green was like, if we want to proceed with this, we've got everything we need to process. Blue was we need further information or permissions or something, but you know, something is needed, either further information from staff or permissions from third parties. And yellow, I think amber was just, red was just it was like an outline concept at this stage. There was nothing really to progress. So I think what we decided that because a large number of the items are green, but it's quite clear from looking at them that some of those items are already in progress, have already been actioned, but are pending installation. They don't need budgeting for, the costs are already there. But some of the other items are quite low budget, and some of the other ones are high budget. You don't really get an appreciation of that from that document. So I think we agreed that those items in there are going to be dropped now into a table to now to prioritize across the first 5 years of the plan, with 2 extra columns, one for cost and one for ward. Sorry? Yeah, but it hadn't been when we had the meeting. That's all I'm saying. So that was the agreed next step, yeah. And the intention is to whittle that down to what we're going to do in year 1, what we're going to do in year 2, and so on up to 5, with reference to the available budgets, which isn't just Parks Capital budget, but Parks Capital budget, I think, is about 45 grand for next year, plus any underspend from this year. But there will also, you know, we still have to make a decision on, you know, I say 45,000 for next year. We haven't set it, but it's been that for the last 2 years. So, and it remains to be seen, based on the previous discussion about what we factor in for play area budget. But I think that can be led by this work that the staff have already been done to make recommendations, rather than just give a budget and then confine ourselves to that. Now we've had some work, we should be able to set a budget that's led by this assessment. And some of it will be horticultural. So I think we're well placed, like over the next couple of months, to do the next stage, to even a recommendation made on that table to formally agree priorities, not just for the next year, but for years 1, 2, you know, over the next 5 years, what we're going to do in each year, allowing for the fact that some larger capital projects with significant grant funding might be in the mix there. I suggest we don't let those intrude, deal with those separately. But I think, I don't know what others think. I think we're well placed based on what we've done to actually agree our priorities for each of the years in the next 5 years, and then to slot that into the budget.
Okay, thank you. Wendy?
Yeah, just, I mean, when I looked at it, the thing that of course sticks out really strongly are the bicycle racks. Now, I know it's not a kind of fancy job, but if we do bicycle racks, rather than having them still down as provisional for autumn, if the bicycle racks are actually installed, it then leaves space in Unit 2 to get the games tables in. At the moment, to be ordered. At the moment, the games tables can't be ordered, or even though the budget has been fixed, I think, for probably 2 years.
The games tables were agreed before the bicycle.
Yes, so the money is there, but the games tables can't be ordered because there's no place to store them. Why is there no place to store them? Because the bicycle racks are taking up the space. So I would suggest that we say politely to the ground maintenance team, do the bicycle racks in the right place and create some space so that those kind of which in many ways are kind of smaller jobs. After the summer, you know, the dry weather's probably finished now. It's going to be freezing cold and wet. It's going to be too wet for concrete soon, isn't it? So we're going to be screwed up, sorry, on that one. But while that doesn't happen, they are taking up space in Unit 2 and other work that we've agreed, budgeted for, the money's there, isn't happening. So top priority, please, the rather than, and not provisional, because provisional means they're gonna get left. They're going to get left and left and left. And the same with the panels, the nature panels, which I think are also taking up storage in Unit 2.
Get rid of the little things. We can put the bigger stuff in there. Yeah. Andy?
I agree, and I'd actually go a step further, to be honest. I totally understand the work that our grounds maintenance team have on, and particularly, you know, over the summer as a peak period, because you get all the seasonal stuff on top of the regular stuff. But, you know, really and truly, these shouldn't be in the 5-year plans anymore, because they've already been agreed and costed for out of this year's budget. They are actions that need implement, and then also this kind of harks to the action log that we were discussing earlier in the year, which is, you know, when an item is agreed, not just to do it, but to set the budget and to ring fence the budget in a council meeting, really to have a log along the lines of the project and legal log that we have, so that we can actually track the progress, and any snapshot, any meeting, we can say who owns that, where's it at, so that stuff doesn't just get lost. I'm not suggesting it gets lost routinely, but in the past things have fallen. It happens with the nature of the business that we have. It happens, and with decisions for decisions that are made in the future, that will be recorded and fed in the log by the decision software. I'm not quite sure whether it will pick up decisions that have already been made but not yet implemented. So to make sure that doesn't fall through the gap, what I'd like to do is to take what Wendy step further, and yes, please can we ask staff that where something that's already been agreed and there's a provisional date for implementation in here, can they firm up and actually schedule a date, and then can we have an update item on the next agenda to say what date has been scheduled or what month has been scheduled for it to happen, so that we know that all the items that have been agreed but that are just pending implementation are being taken forward with a definite date. If ground maintenance team have a problem doing that, whether it's resource linked, whatever it is, can they make that known so that we're clear what the issue is? And that would be my proposal.
Okay, Wendy?
Yeah, I'm curious about the concreting in, because the ones that have been installed at Dean's Oval aren't concreted in. They're a kind of fixed, they're a rack, and the rack is then bolted to the concrete.
Yeah, if it's already on a hard stand, then it won't need concrete.
Yes, but most of our parks have hard standings, so they won't need concreting in. We can certainly find somewhere in Sparrow's Nest that, you know, like just by the restaurant or by the Martello's, there's space in both those places. They could be just concrete, so they don't need a concrete base as such. So I think that excuse is wearing very, very thin, because if it was going to be in the middle of grass, yes, but most of them aren't going to be in the middle of grass. They're going to be actually on concrete that's already there.
Yeah, that's something, I mean, that's something they'll assess site by site. Obviously, yes, a lot of our parks do have hard standings, but it's just making sure they're in an appropriate location, they're not in the way. But yeah, I think where possible, if we can try and avoid having to lay new concrete, we will. But yeah, I'll talk about that with the team.
Appropriate places, surely, have we not done appropriate places? You put them as close as possible to the facilities. You don't do what the Nest do, is put them at the entrance, then nobody wants to stop.
Anyway, I'll second Andy's proposal. Bernie?
Just a quick one on Fen Park. I see there's an approximate figure of 55 to 65,000 the fitness equipment. Is that from, because I know that when we met before for the 5-year plans, Ewan was going to go away and have a look at fitness equipment because he felt that the stuff we had down Normanston wasn't particularly good and he felt he could get better and cheaper. So that is that based on anything that Ewan has done? Or?
That is based on what we've got at Whitton Green. So that's based on the similar sort of spec amount of equipment that we've got at Whitton.
Okay, and the other piece on that, okay, would suggest this is not treated as a priority and considered for 2027, 2028. I mean, obviously we're aware we've got replacement equipment that's needed in the park, so I suppose we'll have to live with it. But I will point out the people down reading your notes, the people who are unhappy about the assault style equipment. They thought they were getting like an outside gym as was going in Normanston Park. So that is the issue there, that when it rolled up, that wasn't what they were asked for. And a residents group had also sent feedback in specifying what they would like. And either that wasn't passed on by the person concerned, and it didn't seem to be taken into consideration. So I just like that to be borne in mind.
Yeah, we did do consultation at the time, and it was based on assault course equipment at Fen and adult gym at Normanston.
Yeah, so I've seen the email from the group, and it doesn't say that. Their feedback was for gym type equipment, but as I say, that seems to have got lost along the way or not passed on, unfortunately. And as for further public engagement, last year we spent quite a lot of time putting together a consultation document, which quite a few people filled in. So we only got that in November. I think we considered it in November last year. And once again, in Fen Park, they are asking for gym equipment. The Friends of Fen Park did their own consultation in May. Again, a copy which has been sent in. I think it may have been sent to you. And again, they are asking for gym equipment. So I wouldn't like to see this go into the drop down and off.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, suggestions for priorities is taking into account not just what we're doing in parks and open spaces, but the budget as a whole. Absolutely. Looking at our precept as a whole. Yeah. So, and looking at what realistically we can achieve in the next year. So it's things like where we've got pieces of play equipment, for instance, that are reaching end of life. Do those want to be treated as a priority, because they will disappear and they will not be replaced otherwise? So it's definitely going to be a balancing act, and it's something our budget and loan subcommittee will have to look at very carefully in the context of the entire budget. But yeah, these notes, as I say, they're not set in stone. There's no council decision on any of this at the moment as to when we do or don't do projects, but it was purely looking at what costs may be involved. As I say, looking at what realistically we may be able to achieve in next year's budget. It may be that we can do more than we think, which would be great, and in which case we'll go by what the public are saying to us as well. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind.
Totally appreciate that. Thank you, Lauren. But we've got a lot of spend coming up, and in that park, of course, we've got play equipment that's now got to be replaced.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, I was actually involved with the discussions when the outdoor fitness equipment was put in at Normanston Park and Fen Park, I think the budget for each of those was around about 25 or 26 grand, and I think we probably have to say that's a lesson learned, plus the hoo-ha we had over the installation. But with regard to Fen Park specifically, I don't remember seeing the public consultation at the time. What we did have was some quite definite feedback from the rep to the Friends group at that stage that they wanted assault course equipment. Now, I too have seen the email since that actually says the feedback was something different, but we acted in good faith based on what we were told. So I would, you know, I totally accept that is not what members of the Friends group were asking for, but we believed it was at the time based on the feedback we were getting from the rep, and we acted in good faith on that. So I totally agree there's a discussion that's needed in the context of the budget, but I would also want to counter any suggestion that actually we got feedback saying please do this and we just took it upon ourselves to do something else, because we didn't. We thought we were actually responding to a resident's request. I totally accept that isn't the case, but that is the basis on which we approach that installation. But yes, I think it is something that we need to take a look at and see what we do. I think also, in addition to the money that we had in the Fen Park tab, which now looks like it's probably going to be earmarked against the tower unit, or at least some of it, I think we had about 9,000 left locked against outdoor fitness equipment generally. So that isn't going to provide new fitness equipment for a site, but it's the first 9,000 of whatever the bill is. So obviously we should use that up before we precept.
Before I come to you, Wendy, we did have a proposal and a seconder for the bike racks. Should we take that, please? All in favour?
Propose that they become a priority to basically to, you know.
It was already,
But
oh, whatever.
with the addition that we have a specific date
yeah.
update for the next agenda.
So all in favour? That's everyone. Did you get that, Taylor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Wendy.
Well, I was just going to say on the outdoor fitness equipment, I know the one in the Witton is apparently well used. The one in Normanston Park isn't. I don't care what anybody says, it isn't. I go through Normanston Park a lot. It's very rarely used.
That's more early morning there.
Along the seafront, as you know, East Suffolk Council has spent a load of Towns Fund money on adult equipment. Might that not satisfy some of the residents who use Fen Park?
I've not actually seen it yet. All I've seen is the planting.
Oh, there's
on
loads.
it.
There's loads. It's as you go along. I mean, I've seen a child swinging on it, but that's about it. I think it's, you know, a questionable expense sometimes.
Yeah, thank you. Andy?
I think we also need to be careful about basing our assessment and use on actually what's going on there when we happen to walk or ride past. Because I've had different feedback for the outdoor fitness equipment at Normanston Park that actually it's used quite a lot early in the morning. It may not be used in the middle of the day, but there is some quite active use sort of at different times of day. What I'm saying, Wendy, is that actually there are different opinions on this. So I just want to counter what has been said. I'm not up there at 7 o'clock in the morning, but I am getting told by people that they are using it. So no, I'm not offering a definite opinion, Wendy. I'm just saying that actual opinions and what people witness of use will be different at different times of day. So I don't want the comment to stand that actually it isn't well used when that might not be the case. It might very well vary according to the time of day.
Thank you very much. Should we move on now? Or is there anything else you need to add, Lauren?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So number 35, to receive a report on the Normanston Park changing rooms. Wendy?
I read this quite carefully, and I do tend to agree with the staff's assessment about which one we should go for, because the others, first of all, are phenomenally expensive, and it looks like us getting funding for those ones is going to be much more difficult, and isn't going to be as straightforward as was first suggested. Demolition of a building that's actually, even though internally it does need a lot of work, externally the building's fine. It's a solid building. So if in some way that could just be refurbished to suit, it's 2 football pitches we have, isn't it? Mm-hmm. To suit the 2, because we don't know about the third one. The third football pitch is the one that would create problems, as I understand it, for the Football Association's money, because the Football Association will only provide money if you're compliant with their rules, and their rules are that all teams playing have to have 2 changing rooms each, which means if you've got 3 pitches, you've got to have 6 changing rooms, which just mean in order to apply for the money, we'd have to knock down the existing building, build another one. So we could have 6 changing spaces, but with no guarantee that anybody's going to use the 3rd football pitch. And actually, I think refurbishing what's there, which is still, I think that was the option, wasn't it? Is that the one? That's the one I'm kind of leaning towards, but not being a football player. You know, I mean, when I've been down there watching them play football, they just throw everything on the grass and all their keys or their bags and everything. So
Most of them already come ready, don't they?
anything we do, improved showers and toilets and secure lockers would be, I think, very, very welcome.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you. I've also read this, and I've actually feel that the opposite way round should be given further consideration. Number of reasons. The total cost to the town council on the first option apparently would be around about 135,000, and which would be about a couple of £100,000 less than the full project cost of the new building. Why I think further consideration should be given to that is not taking it in isolation, whether that building could be multi-use, because we're also about to consider pump track or the walkie track, the other track thing. So there's there are plans for expanded access and use across the spectrum of people in Normanston Park. This last weekend, it was Lowestoft Carnival. We took our granddaughter down there. Finding somewhere to change her when she needed changing was a nightmare. There wasn't anywhere available. And there may have been, but we couldn't find it. So what I'm meaning is that if there was a facility that offered changing facilities to the public, as well as changing rooms for sport and football and the rest of it, I think a more widely available and usable facility, accepting the cost, and therefore it would be a long-term project, it would be a major project. But I think with the plans that we've potentially got and have got for Normanston Park, being more ambitious in what facilities we're putting in to support the spectrum of people that we're anticipating and hoping will go there is something we should give further consideration to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
I tend to agree on the, without actually having an opinion myself on which option should we go for. I tend to agree that it probably needs further consideration, because the original plan, I don't want to mention the funder's name because it's in the report, but the original plan was that they would be refurbished and we would 25% match fund, and we therefore had that amount in the budget. And now the fund has changed its position, presumably because of other demands they have on their own budgets and so on like that. So it's a 50% match fund. Now, option A, which is to refurbish the existing facility, would be entirely town council funded. There would be no grant funding involved. So we'd be looking at, 85 grand plus on top of what we've already got in the accounts. So essentially, under option A, we'd be fully funding it. Under the other options, we would be 50% funding it. On that basis, there's not a lot of difference between the ask for us on option B. It's a higher budget, but with external funding, the amount that our input would not be appreciably higher than our total outlay on option A. I also note the comments about the referendum. That doesn't surprise me, and my only comment is why the funder did not mention this at the outset when we were having discussions, because we know, for example, with the clubhouse at Dean's Oval or with the cricket pin, that, you know, they need a male and female changing room, and they need a third changing area for the umpires. And where does that go? So we know that's, and also within their league fixtures, they need to provide changing space for the umpires. If they don't, they get fined. So we need to think about that quite seriously. Option C, I like the look of, but there's no way that's getting funded at our ask in a 1 to 2 year period with what came on the town hall. That would be more like a 3-year outlay if we were going to do that. To put aside that ask, that's a huge ask, even on 50% funding.
In 3 years, you probably can add another 50 on top of that.
Yeah, because that's now. But obviously, if we're looking at raising that sum over 3 years, that's going to go up in that time. So I think realistically it is between A and B, and I think I totally accept and respect the point that Wendy's made. I haven't made a conclusion over which one I'm favour. I'm just talking in pure financial terms. The town council ask is not appreciably different between A and B. The total budget is, but the amount that the town council would need to directly fund is round about the same. So that's worth looking at. I also think that the comment that has been made before is, you know, there is an expectation with us that we would need to provide more pitches, mark out more pitches. I think the town council has expressed its willingness in principle to do that, but is not convinced that the demand is there. There might be pub, you know, well, there used to be pub teams. Some of the pubs that used to have pub teams are closed. There are club teams. But it is not clear how many of those would actually be regularly using it as opposed to casually using it. And on top of that, it's a sloping pitch. So it's quite challenging terrain on which to mark out 6 football pitches because it's not on the level. So to provide a facility that can serve 6 pitches to tick a funder's box is quite problematic if we are not going to get not only given a domain, but if the teams then aren't going to materialise to use the 6 pitches. That's a huge outlay for no demand. I totally respect what Wendy and John have both just said, and I would suggest that we probably don't come down on either one at the moment, given that the town council ask is approximately the same in each case, and that we give this further consideration.
One is that I think we're kind of looking at the Football Foundation's suggestion of, you know, possibly giving some funding with is quite sceptical that we'd ever get it anyway. But also in option A, it can be as flexible as we want. And given that we've got, as John mentioned, we also have tennis courts down there. And we've got this idea of a new activity track. In terms of toilets and baby changing, we've also got a toilet renovation going on in theory going on in Normanston Park. It's in the plan, isn't it? It's happening. And that would include baby changing facilities because the toilets are not very nice at all at the moment. So the changing rooms, I mean, there might be facilities in there, you know, if somebody's taking their child and whatever, but it can be more, I think with option A, it can be more flexible. So we can have changing facilities. We don't have to worry about keeping to anybody's rules, but decent lockers, that's what people do want, decent lockers. But I don't see if you've got decent lockers why teams have to have separate changing rooms. I don't know if football is a different sport from what every other, you know, what everybody else plays. Why is it that 2 football teams can't share a changing room?
Because of their rival football teams, you might end up with problems.
I don't know. Maybe
you never know.
It's just
my thing is, if we went for option A, in the future, nothing stops us going for B or C when we have the money. Just see what the demand is like. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you both, but obviously we can't sort of go for option A and then upgrade it at a later point because option A involves refurbishing the existing footprint and option B.
I didn't mean like in few years, but in about 10 years when it all starts going down again,
Okay,
you can upgrade it.
but obviously, okay, I take your point. So option A now, but keep option B. Yeah, okay.
Keep it open for
But
future.
I take the point that Wendy made about the funding as well, because they have already changed their position. You know, it was an indicative 50%. So it's an indicative 75%. Now it's 50% grant funding. And if we're going to plan for this and plan and budget, we need to be able to do so with certainty. You know, we had the 50,000 that's already in there for the reason that, you know, we had a project budget, and we had been informed of the percentage that we would need to directly fund. That informed what we've ring fenced there. We don't want it to be, we don't want them to change everything on the basis of 50% and then 6 months down the line it's 75%. Because we might not be able to afford a project of that magnitude, at least not in that year. And we don't want that to happen after we've commissioned contractors, because then we're locked into it. So if we're going to do one of the ones where we're seeking funding, then we need a funding agreement in place before we instruct contractors. Otherwise, we've got problems. And it can't be that the funders can just sort of throw in a commitment and then take it away after funds have been locked in. You know, it's public money. So that's why I said I hadn't come to a personal opinion on A and B, but it just strikes me that from a purely financial point of view, and I know it's not a purely financial consideration, the ask for the town council is approximately the same in each case. So if we were potentially get something better and more high spec out of option B for the same direct input, it's worth considering. But noting the cautionary note that Wendy made about the funding actually materialising, but also, you know, at the referendum. So yes, option A, if it was wholly directly funded, we would not be conforming to a funder's rules. That is an advantage in principle, but equally, if teams who are like FA affiliated teams are going to be using that, and we are not providing referee facilities, we need to bear in mind the situation with the cricket team, that they could potentially get fined by their league because those facilities have not been made available for distinct referee accommodation. I don't know what why the funders requirement is that each team, not just each sex, but each team needs its own changing area. So therefore, you know, it's 4. But I suspect that, you know, not just for rival teams, although that's a factor, but obviously the number of people, the space requirement in a combined space. Team talks as well might be an issue, but do them before you turn up. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. We don't need to provide separate facilities so that the other team doesn't hear your team talk. But, you know, stuff like that can be done before they turn up. But it would be interesting. It would be interesting to know what the rationale for that is, because there's quite a cost attached to providing separate changing area for each team. Totally appreciate we need a separate changing area for each sex, but for each team as well.
Should we just put this on the next agenda? Ask Lauren nicely if she can look into the funding a little bit more to see how much we would actually get if we went for it. Can we lock something down?
I think the thing that's not with the problem with B is it does involve demolition of a building, and it's a modular build. Option B, demolishing the existing building. It also, I'm just concerned
But the
because
existing
it's
building
if we
needs a
get
new roof as well.
sorry.
The existing building needs a new roof as well as
Yeah, I
inside.
know that, but I'm just concerned that if we are successfully getting 50% of funding from the Football Federation, will we be allowed to let tennis players and park run and everybody else use it, or is it going to be a building that is purely for that? I'd like that question answered. I'm also concerned about demolition of a building that actually doesn't need demolishing. And that we do have a climate emergency and we shouldn't actually be demolishing unnecessarily. But given that what the staff have asked, I think we can exclude option C and ask for just some more information about A and B in terms of, I think I know where I'm sitting, but I am concerned about, I'd like to know if B means is restrictive use just to football, and what is the likelihood of getting this funding? You know, is it kind of like 10%? Is it 90%? Whatever. And maybe then bring that back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
But I think we can discount C, can't we?
Because I think we're just going to end up being split down the middle here.
Yes.
So if we had some
Yeah.
more information, then we can talk about it next time, hopefully.
Yeah, but
make
they do want to
decisions.
steer from us.
They'll have to wait.
Well, we can. Does anybody think that C is even viable?
Mm.
I do.
700,000.
Are you going to pay John?
That's double, triple what the Dean's Oval will.
Oh, wait, John?
Yeah, I hear
Mike,
what
Wendy?
I hear what everybody is saying as well. I do think at this stage it should not be ruled out. I take the point that Andy was making a moment or two ago, that we should ask for more information, but that could be on all of them. What are the implications? What funding opportunities might there be? What would our obligations be, etc.? And what limitations on these things? Because it's fine to say this organisation will contribute. Some of them then impose really strange rules and regulations on when you've got to roll your left trouser leg up when you go in there or something like that. You know, do we all want to do that? So we want to know exactly what obligations are on us linked to any potential funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is too early to make a decision, and I think it's too early to rule anything out.
It's a bit hard to pick, isn't it? Because really the pavilion would look fantastic, but then the others are a bit more feasible. Andy?
I don't think we need to rule anything out. I agree we shouldn't, but we also don't need to, because ultimately, whichever option we select, the budget means it's going to full council. No committee could make a decision on approving any of these because of the budget. I agree that question that Wendy's asked for B. It would be interesting to know whether actually the football funding would be conditional on it being exclusively used for football, or whether they would be open for it being used for other uses, provided the football need can be met. They might say, providing our minimum football needs are met, we are happy that it can be used, you know, when football teams aren't playing there for other purposes. Yes, let's nail that down, because if it can be used for other sports, that also potentially opens the door to attracting funding from other sources linked to those sports.
It's open to all sports, and there was a requirement for, you know, encourage youth sport and all the rest of it. So it actually supported what is now a very vibrant area, which was a bit restricted before.
So, sorry, Wendy, can I just finish what I was saying before John came in? I'm nearly done. I won't be much longer. So when it will need to go to full council to approve it, and the answers to those questions are needed before we can plan, before we can budget, because we then, depending which option we go for, will inform the delivery period. Is it going to be a 2-year project? C would be, without extra funding, would be 3 years minimum, and probably 4. So if we get the answers to those questions, because if this goes to full council now, they're going to have the same dilemma. They're going to have questions and they're not going to have answers. So if we get the answers, because then we can send it to full council in a prepared state to actually make an informed decision and to assist budgeting. And and the informed decision will need to include, okay, is this a 2 or 3 year delivery and source funding? And I would suggest that regardless of what we think, I haven't made an opinion, you know, Wendy has, John doesn't, all those are valid comments. And I think there is no need to rule anything out at the moment, because even if we could reach a consensus on which one we're in favour, we're not in a position to proceed at the moment, because even with option A, we would need to find another 85 grand fund in the budget. And if that's a 1 year delivery, that's a big ask next year. Well, I know it mentions that in option A, but nothing's been agreed yet,
We're
Wendy.
not
So
going to get anywhere on this tonight. So
no.
last one, Wendy, and then I'm moving on.
I think we have to, we are not Southwold. Southwold is a little town and it's probably its only football pitch. We have Barnard's Meadow, we have Pakefield, we have Dip Farm, we have a number of places in Lowestoft whose whole raison d'etre is football. Barnard's Meadows had massive funding from Suffolk County, I think Suffolk, or maybe the FA. We are providing an opportunity for non-professional, basically friendly matches. I don't know how friendly they are, but basically friendly matches in Normanston Park. We are not competing with those 3-4 other places that are, they have clubs associated with them. We are just providing another place. And therefore, do we really need, you know, state-of-the-art changing rooms? We are not going to ever compete with somewhere like Barnard's Meadow, or is the one at Pakefield, you know, the big posh one, where, you know, the one that's got all sorts of lights and everything.
Yeah.
I think we have to be realistic about this, and it's what we can afford, and to provide decent facilities as soon as we can seems to me to be a priority, rather than trying to pretend that we are the new go-to football place.
Well, I actually don't think the footballers are going to use it as much as the cricketers.
Sorry?
Cricketers. I can't say that word. People who play the cricket, I think that probably be used by them more than anything, because the cricket's
Change,
down there
yeah.
also. Yeah. I'm moving on unless it's important.
Yeah, I just want to say, I agree with what Wendy said, but the other danger is that we have to make sure that we don't spend 135,000 on something that then doesn't get used because it doesn't meet anyone's need.
Exactly.
So,
Oh, yes.
yeah, so that needs to be weighed in the mix. And also, you know, part of the discussion is, I take the total point about the cost. Some of these costs are prohibitive with directly funded, but with planning, we might not need to directly fund it, particularly if we've got multiple funders. That's why we need more information and why we shouldn't be rushed into making a decision now.
Right, we'll move on then, and you could put it on whatever agenda next, and with some more information, and Steve, we'll have another argument about it. Right. 36, to receive a report on the proposed pump track and active track. It was a good report on this as well. Was that Ewan?
Yeah.
Who says it has to be a priority, as I read on there. We'll let Wendy lead on this.
No, I put my hand up first. Although that's
I-
not
to
the
be
one,
honest-
of course.
To
you
be
can pick-
honest,
you can pick.
I was talking to Lauren, so I didn't
Yeah.
actually see who put their hand up first.
I'm very torn on this, because I've had I love the idea of a pump track.
Are you changing your mind now?
I don't know that I am. I mean, the sell for me was the bit about teaching children to ride their bikes, but actually, it's not fair to say there's nowhere that children can't learn to ride their bikes. They tend to be taught in school playgrounds. So I do feel that this is a bit. I know it's something our sports development officer is very, very keen on. And what is is it another running track with activity bars all the way around it? I couldn't quite get my head around it. Why was the skate park mentioned? Because the skate park we were told when they came to look at places for a pump track that our skate park is a state-of-the-art, marvelous design. So I couldn't understand why the skate park was
I
being
think they
mentioned.
mentioned it because it makes it like all inclusive. So you got your pump track, your skate park, your active track for running. So it's all together. It wasn't
Yeah, but
actually
if we have
stated
the
to do
activity
anything with it.
thing, the activity track, this is instead of the pump track.
No, it's both.
Absolutely is not.
Is it not?
No, it's both.
They're not. It's not an either-or decision, and they don't use the same footprint.
No, I don't. But when I read the recommendation was to go ahead with the activity track,
No, it does
not the
state
pump
on,
track?
it states on back, funding for both pump track so much, active track so much, and he's put high priority on both. So he's actually asking for both things for norms to.
I read it as that we wanted to make a shift of, you know, towards the activity. That's how I read it.
No, plus he's also saying on here that, well, maintenance is quite high, so we might need to hire some more people for that. But it says that we might actually get funding for both as well, so it was quite high. So that's good. Andy?
So I think we need to be careful with making comments on a report, you know, like things we read and just throw them out there, because we're in a live stream meeting and the public, can they access this report? Have they, is it gone out with the public agenda? So they can read the whole report. Okay, that's fair enough. That's not so bad. Right, so when the pump track and the active track first came to the county, we asked a specific question: would they be using the same footprint, and therefore did we have to make a choice? And the answer was no. So we said in that case, then, pretty much like the previous discussion, we don't need to rule anything out and just proceed with one, because the intention was that with both of them, they're six-figure projects and we would be seeking major grant funding. We couldn't directly fund projects of this magnitude, certainly not in a short delivery timescale. So I think it's very much, to me, this is very much like the Clark's Lane discussion. The briefing paper is very helpful. I think what we need to be able to make a recommendation and take this to full council for planning and budgeting is totally accepting that we are not in a position to put in an application yet. So it might be a how long's a piece of string conversation, but what proportion for each of these, if we were to progress both, for each of these, what proportion of what is the total cost? Well, we now have that indicative. What proportion of that are we targeting as grant funding, and what proportion of that might we be expected to match fund? That is a really important conversation, because the match fund is what we need to put in the budget. And are we being asked to do that next year or over 2 years? That's what we need to inform a budgeting discussion in Q4 this year, and that's what we need to actually take an item to full council to ask them to make a decision on. We haven't got to have everything 99% ready, like everything ready to go, but to make those very basic starter decisions to aid planning, we need to know what proportion of it do our staff think we would be expected 1 year or 2 years? Do we need to think about setting aside that funding? Then we have something to take to full council, and at the same time authorise staff to actually have, if it's a goer, okay, yes, we'll put X amount, we'll put X amount in the budget for 26-27. In the meantime, we ask staff to take these discussions to the next level with funders. I think that's what we really need from our staff between now and the end of the calendar year.
So the same outcomes.
Yeah.
Then.
So I would just say, I'd make a proposal that could note the report. It's a good report, but to take it to the next level, to aid planning, aid budgeting, and aid a full council decision, could we ask staff to provide that next step of information, and bring it back to the next meeting?
Okay, thank you.
Does that sound reasonable?
John?
Thank you. Yeah, everything sounds reasonable. I rather agree that the way, I think it's again a good report, but the way it's been presented, it does rather imply either or. That
Yes.
its structure sort of says, because it compares the two, and so it leads, and so in the work that Andy is proposing, and any sort of further revision or development of the plan, could it be made clear that it is not intended at this stage to be an either or, but that it may be that for whatever reason, one would be a priority to the other in some form? Because otherwise, what's the point in writing all this comparing the two? If there is no if there is no intent that it would be this one or that one, then having all this information is surely there to say which one you would intend to develop if we go ahead with either first.
Okay. Thank you. Wendy?
Yes, I mean, it clearly says, you know, to prioritise, which implies, and it does, as I won't repeat what John says because John's put it perfectly. You know, it compares the two. For me, the thing about the pump track is that it is something that appeals to young people, and we don't do much for young people. We know we have a skate park that's very, very well used and very, very popular. The idea of a pump track is something that young people absolutely love. We do tend to do what we do a lot for toddlers, and we do a lot for older people, but for the teenagers, once again, they get kind of left out, don't they? So I think John's absolutely right that these are presented as separate proposals. They're not pitting one against the other. I really don't know what an activity track is unless it's a running track.
It's a running track.
It's a running track. Right, okay. It's not going to appeal much to teenagers, is it?
Oh, you never know.
That's a generalisation, isn't it? Some teenagers.
Just observation.
Well, no, it isn't. Some teenagers. Well, if it's observation, watch the sports race and look at the youngsters who took part in that. Look at the youngsters who took part in the 10K run. There are youngsters who belong to athletics clubs and run.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the personal recommendations on here, he does prioritise the active track, but he doesn't actually say no to the pump track. He just says it's going to be a bit more harder to do. Andy?
Sorry, I don't want to go back over everything what everyone said, but I would just want to reiterate and nail it down that when this originally came to Parks or Aid or whatever it was as a briefing paper, it was very much pitched as comparing one against the other on the basis that we needed to choose one or the other. And I asked in that meeting, were they using the same footprint, and was told no. And I said, why do we need to rule one out then? We might want to progress both, particularly if we could get funding for both and the funders would be different because of the activity. And so I think if we go back and say, look, we don't want to make an either or decision at the moment. We totally accept when we're in a position to make decisions, we might need to prioritise, but that will be then. But in the meantime, and that was the agreement from the original meeting, let's work up both proposals to a point where they can be considered, because it's been established they're not using the same footprint in the park. So let's work both proposals up to a point where there is something to full council to consider. Then we can make a choice about whether we progress both on a similar timescale, whether we only progress one, or whether we progress both, but we do one first. And that is why we need that. We need, okay, we've got an outline spec now, which we didn't have before, but that is where we need that information about, we've got the total cost, but what would we be targeting for both of them without preempting whatever decision full council make? What would we be targeting as what we would need to directly fund, and what would be looking to be grant funded? Because that is a decision that potentially we need to make between October and December. If we start having all these other conversations about what we might do, and then we haven't actually got an indication of what we match fund, and we missed a boat in January, that's it for another year. If we can get that information in Q4 this year, we can at least look at putting part funding in or part match funding in the 26-27 budget. We can't do that if we don't have that information. The other stuff can wait because we're not in a position to progress it. But if we have that, that will aid planning, and that will aid taking something to full council to make those decisions and consider all those other points that have been made. But at the moment, it is not clear whether we would be expected to directly fund all of it, none of it, or part of it. And that's what we need to know.
Well, you made a proposal on this, didn't you?
So that is my proposal, to try and get clarification on that and bring it back to the next meeting, and then we can look at, are we in a position to send something to full council?
Everyone, thank you. Right.
Sorry.
Last thing, Wendy, because it's getting
I
late.
just remembered something that I meant to bring up under the 5-year plan, which is the lighting of the skate park.
Can we put that on the next agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is in there. It's not feasible at the moment, basically.
No,
So,
I know.
yeah. But yeah, we can obviously put it on the next agenda for an update, but yeah, there's no update.
There's no update. Right, number 37, date of the next meeting and reports. Tuesday, the 16th of September at 7. So number 38, items for the next agenda. Can you please send them in to Lauren or Taylor? So I now close this meeting. Thank you.